Welcome to Central Missouri Alumni Stories. I'm your host, Corey Bittner. Today I am joined by Homer Kay. Homer is the former CEO of Hallmark Cards International and also a fellow UCM Alumni Foundation Board Director. All right, Homer, thanks again for taking the time to come on the show today.
Well, thank you, Corey. It's great to be here, and thanks for doing this. I think this is really good for the institution, and I look forward to many more of these and what can come out of these.
I appreciate that. We have, as many of our listeners or viewers might know, the videos are continuing to pick up more traction. I know that we have individuals that are alumni that are watching this. We hope also to make sure that we are speaking to students and even future students also of the university.
Terrific.
So we really kind of want to make sure that we're keeping this relevant for everyone.
Okay.
But to kind of get us started, Homer, in telling your story, let's just start with where did you grow up?
Sure. Well, I was an Air Force brat, so we moved every couple of years. So I lived in a lot of places, but we ended up in a little town just about 10 miles from Orangeburg, Noster, Missouri. My father retired, so I was able to finish really most of middle school and then high school there. So it was a great place to grow up. I grew up very differently than my kids are growing up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, before you ended up in Noster,
Yeah.
As a military brat, were you all over?
We were kind of all over, yeah. We lived in Newfoundland, a little stint in Japan, Indiana, Texas. Yep.
Okay,
And
all over.
Didn't go. The only place I went to school out of those was, as far as internationally, was in Newfoundland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So grew up in Noster.
Yeah.
You ultimately selected UCM. Well, let's kind of talk about how you ended up at UCM, right?
Sure.
Because we've talked a little bit off of here. I know you made it 10 or 20 miles east, right? No, I'm just kidding. But
10 miles. 10 miles. UCM or CMSU as it was, because I'm that old, right? CMSU was part of my life growing up as a kid. We had football tickets and basketball tickets because we didn't have ESPN in those days, so it was pretty good. It was cheap entertainment, I'm sure, or else my dad wouldn't have bought them. Did that district band contest and homecoming parades and all of that. Participated a lot at Central. Our first basketball game, high school, was always against College High, which was part of the university back in those days. So I had a real affinity for Central, but I didn't really want to go to college there. I wanted to go away somewhere, which for me, probably meant like going to Columbia or something. Right. Instead of 10 miles, I wanted to go like 70 miles. But no, it turned out we had my father had some businesses. He became ill, and my mom really needed me, so she needed me at home to help with the businesses, and I started out at Central with the idea of, okay, maybe a year from now I'll go to Columbia, because I'd been accepted there and all that, and that sounded kind of cool to me. I wanted to kind of spread my wings, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I got to Central and I loved it, and I just stayed there and had a great experience. I graduated. I started there in '75. I graduated in '78. I went through school in 3 years. It was kind of all business for me. Mm-hmm. I might have wished I would have stayed 4 years because I liked it. I was having so much fun, but it was good. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, I guess making that decision, at that age, right? I mean, it's a pretty mature decision to understand and recognize, what the need was in terms of your family, being able to be there. Saying, I eventually want to spread my wings, but I know that this is the right place for me right now. I admire that, and I respect being able to make that decision at that age. Was the reluctance, and maybe that's the appropriate term for it, toward UCM initially, just simply that it was just too close to home?
Close to home. I knew it really
going to
felt
college
more
in
like
your backyard in a way.
Or going to high school again, because I knew a good percentage of my class, the people who were local to Namna. We'll probably end up there. Now the class was small, so that probably meant like 25 people, right? But I thought, well, I don't want to go to school with them again.
Right.
But I actually hardly ever saw those people.
Right.
It's because they all went in different programs. We weren't in the same classes, and it all changed once you went to college. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And my experience was very similar. Now, in terms of everything changing once I went to college. When you went off to school, did you know what you wanted to study?
I kind of did. So my father owned some gas stations, and he was a military guy, but then he owned some gas stations, motel, and I kept the books. And my dad kept the books kind of, I called it, he had a shoebox for the receipts and a shoebox for the disbursements, and you kind of knew if one got heavier than the other, you might be in trouble. And
sure.
so,
right.
so I kind of got in and helped my dad and realized where he was making money and where he wasn't. He actually wasn't making very much. And that kind of made me want to get into the world of kind of accounting. And so I went to college with the intent of going into accounting, and I thought I wanted accounting and economics, but after a couple economics courses, I changed my mind. I just stick to accounting. And so I stuck to accounting, and that, I moved away from that later in life, but kind of knew what I wanted to be.
Okay, so you went off to school, knew what you wanted to do, and then,
and
finished in 3 years.
And a great accounting program. Lots of professors with some of them were career guys that had been at some of the big accounting firms, some of them were corporate guys, and some of them were, people who had grown up right there and gotten their doctorates and that sort of thing, but really good people.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything you can share? Thinking about your time in college, what ultimately made UCM end up being the school that you chose to stay at versus making the decision to transfer somewhere else? When you look back on your time there, what do you attribute as some of your either best memories or your favorite parts about going to school there, whatever it might be? What kept you there?
It kind of become like family. I think it was just different than I expected it, because the professors really took an interest in me as an individual, helped me with developing to my full potential. And I didn't really expect, I'd kind of always had this view of college life that you're kind of on your own. You got to learn it. If you don't study, you'll flunk out. But these people really cared about you. And I just got a real affinity for them. I remember a lot of their names to this day. A lot of them are gone now. But
sure.
Yeah, and so as a result, it after a year, it was like, oh, this would be hard to leave. Why would I want to go somewhere else and start over?
Right, and I think that's probably a good takeaway for, someone who's in high school now.
Yeah.
Someone who's considering where it is that they want to go to school. I was just reading about how UCM had moved up to, I believe it was number 16 on the list for the U.S. News and World Report's best colleges in the Midwest for 2020. Yep. And I understand that it's just kind of continued its ascent up the list. And I think when people are considering their options, talking about exactly what you're describing, because so many people have shared with me, at least on this show at a minimum, that was their experience also.
Yeah, I'm smiling a little bit because as I got into my professional career, you'd be with people and then, where did you graduate? And say Duke and Texas, and I always said that I graduated from Harvard, the Harvard of the Midwest.
There you go, I like that. Yep.
In Warrensburg, Missouri.
Sure.
I just felt that way about the place. Yeah.
And I did too. It's funny that you say that, because when I started my career in finance in the wealth management business, I was with a large firm called UBS, and I went through basically a new financial advisor program, and some of the other people that were in my class were from all around the country, and it was lots of graduates from Ivy League schools, or from, like you said, Texas, Gonzaga, Washington, all these different places, Georgetown, wherever it was. And I remember thinking, while I went to school in the Midwest, probably at a school that some of these people might not be familiar with, I felt like I was just as adequately prepared as anybody
You're prepared, you're competitive, and so any doubts you have in your mind are just that, they're just in your mind, because I was as prepared as anyone else, and got to work around the world with that, and I thought the professors there prepared me very well for that. Yeah.
Sure, and I'm glad you felt that way. I felt certainly the same way too, and I think There's probably lots of other folks that feel that same
Yeah.
way and share that affinity. Now, before we kind of move on and talk about your career professionally,
Sure.
I'm curious if you could go back in time, or if you had the opportunity to, tell yourself something that you needed to hear going off to college at 18 years old, or if you could give someone who's a senior in high school a piece of advice, what would you, and maybe it's two different questions, but one, what piece of advice would you give someone, and two, when you look back on your college experience, what do you think you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think what I didn't do was take advantage of everything that was there for me. I was part of for a business fraternity,
Sure.
Delta Pi. I think I can't even remember the name of it. But that's about all I did. I mean, I did a little intramurals and different things, but I would say really take advantage of the total college experience. I rushed through it. I wanted to get out. I was tired of school, so I got through in 3 years. I tested out of a lot of programs, but I would say take advantage of it all. I think I missed out on some of it because I was able to test out of some general studies. I think those things would have been good for me, and if I'd go back and do it, I would have taken advantage of a full 4 years. And
Sure.
I think it was too short, really.
Yep. And it's almost kind of,
I would have been more grown up when I got out of school.
Sure. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's taking the time and enjoying that experience, because
Yeah.
it's like anything else where, once it's over with, you look back on that and it's like what a great opportunity somebody has when they're in college, where you're
Very much so.
hopefully you're in a position where your full-time job is to learn and to be open-minded and to absorb and soak it all in and get involved.
It's a time like no other in your life, and it goes just like that in a blink of an eye.
I know, and
it's over,
it's
right?
laying the foundation for what the rest of your life's going to look like.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see that when you're 18 years old,
Yeah.
right?
No.
And it's hard to explain that to someone who's
It's
18
totally
years
hard
old.
to see. Totally hard to see when you say, "Oh man, I'm tired of being poor and
Sure. Totally. Yep.
I want to get that paycheck and all those things." But it'll come.
Yep.
Those things
Absolutely.
will come.
Okay, good. So studied accounting.
Yep.
What did you think you wanted to do when you were studying accounting?
I thought I wanted to go into public accounting.
Okay.
And when I got out and visited some firms and understood what public accountants did, I realized that's not what I want to do. And that wasn't until kind of my last year in school, and I thought I was in a real kind of mess there. But I found a way through it, and my accounting has been terrific as kind of the baseline for everything I did in business, really, even though I got into some general management. It was so important to me.
Helpful.
Yeah.
What was your first job out of college?
Sure. First job out of college was in Jefferson City, Missouri, with the Missouri State Auditor's Office as just as an auditor. I'd met a guy actually at the University of Missouri named Jim Antonio. Jim Antonio was the head of the accounting department at Columbia. He was recruiting me, and he was like the deputy state auditor at the time. And so we kept in touch, and when I graduated, Jim said, "Oh, if you don't want to," and he had been at a CPA firm before too.
Sure.
He said, "Hey, if you don't want to come here." And so I went there and was able to, I was there just 2 years, passed the CPA exam. Back in those days, you had to get so much experience and all that before you could take the exam. So I took the exam, passed it, and got my permit to practice, and then never used it. But it was one of those things that actually, some of his name was Dr. Arthur Norton, had, etched in my mind that I had to get that CPA. So I did. And I still have the certificate and all of that.
Good for you.
Never used it, really.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. So didn't use it. You were there for 2 years, got the CPA, and what happened after that?
Sure. Well, one of the things I didn't tell you is while I was, like a lot of people, while I was at school in Warrensburg, I met my wife, my future wife. We didn't date in college, but we started dating after college. Actually, she was from Jeff City, but she graduated and moved to Kansas City. And so we started dating while she lived in Kansas City. We decided to make it more formal and get married. And when we did that, we wanted to live in Kansas City. So I started interviewing up here Interviewed with a little place called Hallmark Cards back then, which was growing fast and was a great place. It still is, but it was really growing fast back in those days here in Kansas City, kind of the place to work. Actually, I landed an auditing job, but when I got here, they said, we need you in cost accounting, which I didn't really like cost accounting, but I went into to cost accounting with Hallmark, and I thought, I'll work here a couple of years. And I just retired from there a year and a half ago after 38 and a half years. So had a great experience there. And, I would hearken a lot back to my university days and how Central Missouri State prepared me for it. Yeah.
That's an interesting trend that you went to college, thought you'd go there for a year and then leave. You stayed there. Took a job with Hallmark, thought you were going to be there for a few years and leave, retired 38 years later.
Yeah.
But again, that just speaks to the great unknowns, right?
Yeah, who knows? But it was a great experience, yeah.
What did your wife study when she was at school in Warrensburg?
Funnily enough, we met, we had classes together. We didn't really know each other that well on campus. She was in accounting, she studied accounting, and so she was working in public accounting here in Kansas City when she graduated after me.
Okay.
But she came to, even though she was from Jeff City, she came to Kansas City. And so she didn't want to move back home.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I moved up here in Kansas City. It was kind of like home to me anyways. But so I often say we merged instead of married.
Yeah, right.
We were both accounting grads.
Okay, and so that's what she was doing when you moved, you came to Kansas City and started at Hallmark.
Yeah. So we got married 3 months after I started at Hallmark. We're coming up on 40 years. So I guess that's probably the best thing I got out of University of Central Missouri. Really was my wife Becky.
That's good.
Yeah,
that is good, and I'm sure Becky's going to appreciate that when she watches this. So, and I'm sure that you're right too.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a comment you made about when you started at Hallmark, where you started at, ultimately your career there, how you feel like UCM specifically prepared for you for your career. Is there anything specific that you can point to, or is it just the foundation of knowledge?
I think it's the foundation of knowledge, but also it goes back to there was a professor there, and his name was Dr. Parmley, and Dr. Parmley was kind of famous because he taught cost accounting, and nobody liked cost accounting, including me.
Yeah, you're right.
Including me. And when I got to Hallmark, and they said, well, we're going to put you over here in cost accounting, I thought, oh boy. But you know what? I knew it all, and that actually formed kind of the baseline. Hallmark was installing some new systems. I got involved in building those systems, and that became the baseline of my knowledge. I understood the greeting card business from the ground up. I understood the total economics of it, and that served me well for 38 plus years. And it was all things, really, that it was learning. And then I think the other thing, though, was some leadership. I had a couple of, like we all have, whether you go to high school or college, a couple of people that just kind of got a hold of you.
Yes.
And there was a guy named Dr. McFarland that actually taught business communications back in those days.
Okay.
And I was a bit of a country bumpkin, and McFarland got a hold of me and kicked me pretty good, but became great friends. He was a good friend of my wife's too, and he really made a difference for me around leadership and communications, and just kind of drilled it into me. And one of those guys that, I could have I think I had 2 classes with him maybe, but he didn't have to, right? But he kind of pulled me out and said, look, young man, here's some things you need to work on, and if you don't, you're not going anywhere, dude.
Interesting.
And I've never forgotten that or forgotten him for that reason. And so that from kind of a leadership standpoint, and again, I think being in a setting where it wasn't so big, the classes weren't so big that instructors, professors, this guy was a full professor, doctor and all that, but willing to do that for you.
Right.
That made a difference.
And I would think, while it might sound maybe cliche on some level, right, to talk about how, at a smaller school, you're not just a number, this or that. However someone might want to phrase that. The reality is, to your point, there was nothing saying that Dr. Parmley, right?
Yeah, Dr. Parmley in cost accounting, and then and then Dr. McFarland.
Dr. McFarland,
right? I mean, I wouldn't even major. That was just a class I had to take,
Yeah, there was nothing requiring him to pull you aside.
And whatever it was, chemistry, but because why did he bother with me? But for some reason, he did. He helped me get to Hallmark. He wrote me a great letter of recommendation. I've never forgotten that.
Yep. That critical, instrumental.
Yeah.
Once you started at Hallmark early on from cost accounting all the way up to, ultimately becoming CEO of Hallmark International, what kind of take us through that journey?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, my first job was in cost accounting. That then led to Hallmark in those days had plants, what we call the Kansas plants, Leavenworth, Topeka, and Lawrence, and then a plant in Kansas City. So my second job, I then went to Leavenworth, not to prison, but
that's good.
to our manufacturing facility to be the plant controller there. And you did everything from you did the cost accounting we had systems that did it, but you were responsible for the reporting for that factory, all of the payroll, getting that in and all of that on a weekly basis, and being part of the plant management team at a fairly young age. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I became responsible for the plant controllers in each of the plants. So I moved back to Kansas City then, and because I kind of understood how it all worked. And then I was in financial. I got to go something completely different. I got out of cost accounting and went to financial planning and analysis, did acquisitions and divestitures for Hallmark for a couple of years, and back in those days, we thought we could plan for 10 years, so I did the 10-year plan for the company. But that gave me kind of more of a macro view of the corporation. And it was about that time that we started moving finance people into the business, because finance was kind of we were all on one floor. It was hard to get in, it was hard to get out, and all of that. We knew all the company secrets, but we started moving finance people into the businesses. So I moved out into the Hallmark brand as the director of finance for the brand. Okay. And that really gave me. I went on sales calls. I got into product management and various pieces that was really instrumental in my career development. That was after about maybe 10 years at Hallmark. So I had done several things. I'm skipping a lot here. Sure. I'd done just about every accounting job there was. So it's like, whoa, what's it going to do? But
that's a lot of 10 years.
But I really had a desire to move out of finance and accounting and get into general management. And so that Hallmark brand job really allowed me to do that. And then after that, I moved internationally. Then Hallmark asked me to go to England. Hallmark had purchased several companies over there, needed to do some integration work, and so I was put over there as an expatriate, but as the director of finance for the UK. And but then I took a 2-year assignment. I was kind of slow because I ended up in there for 5 years. But I became the CFO of the organization, and then before I left, I became the president or the managing director of the UK. Ran that for a few years, and then returned home in 2000. After kind of what I guess I had about 20 years of experience then, and then I kind of developed this. Expertise in small businesses, because the UK was a much smaller business than the US, but smaller businesses that need turning around, smaller businesses that need kind of a different look. And I did that for Hallmark for about 10 years. I call myself the vice president of miscellaneous. Okay. I was actually what we call the vice president of the greeting card subsidiaries. And I had subsidiaries all over the United States and in Canada, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. And then I thought I was finished with international, and then Don Hall came and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come back into international," and so that's where I ended up my career. So I really spent about oh, half, a little better than half, kind of doing finance and accounting kind of jobs, and then the last half of my career was general management, and it was terrific. It was terrific. I have no regrets looking back. Yeah, there were other things I could have done and all of that, but it was great. Provided great experiences for my family living around the world. I got to travel the world. I did business in 100 countries.
Wow.
But it did the travel thing, kind of took its toll. So
I can imagine.
yep. But it was great. It was great. No regrets. Worked for great people. The Hall family, Hallmark Cards, amazing. Really, couldn't have written the script any better.
That's wonderful. What was the experience like, out of curiosity, when you were moving? I mean, I know that we were talking off air. You were married and had a family when you moved as an expat over to England for 5 years, United Kingdom.
Yeah.
What was that like? And then moving back. What was
Sure.
that like?
Well, we were in a fortunate situation where my wife and I, she was finance. She had been the CFO for the water district of Johnson County, Kansas, and one day she just told me, we can't both keep doing these things, and I'm like, and so that afforded us when the opportunity in England came. Everybody was kind of voted yes, except for a 10-year-old daughter, who wasn't real happy about leaving her friends. But she ultimately voted yes. And so, moving a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old and a wife to a whole nother, even though they spoke English, in the middle of the winter, it rained every day when we moved over there. I thought I'd really messed up, but it really ended up being one of the better things that we ever did in our life. It made our little family closer to this day. Imagine. Now we live like within a mile and a half of one another because we enjoy hanging out together.
Right.
And that really made a difference, as well as it opened up a new world for a lot of our family members, extended family and friends who came over to visit us. My wife ran like a boarding house for
I bet.
for 5 years. I was always gone. My friends would be visiting, and I'd be somewhere else in the world. Yeah. So it was so good. Not just professionally, but also personally. I wouldn't have traded the experience. It was fabulous. And to think back, that all kind of started down in a little town called Warrensburg, and the preparations for that. If I hadn't had that foundation, I don't think I would have gotten to do that.
That's excellent.
Yep.
What, out of curiosity, you said you did business in over 100 countries. What was your favorite place to go or to visit?
My favorite place that I visited during those days would have been South Africa. It wasn't our biggest business or anything, but just as far as a place to go and all of that, I think from a business standpoint, I probably enjoyed the Scandinavian countries the most. You read about how Finland and Sweden and all of that, are kind of the happiest people on earth, even though they're like socialist situations and all that. But really working with those people was a lot of fun, a lot less high pressure and all of that. And I really enjoyed that part of it. But I got a lot. Hallmark had wholly owned subsidiaries in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Japan, in Australia, in New Zealand, and then Mexico, and but then everything else was through licensees and distributors, and those were really kind of the fun, because a lot of those were little family-owned businesses that you got to work with. And I only made it into the countries that were the bigger businesses and all of that. Did a lot of businesses in Dubai, and that was a really special place to do business. People have their views of the Middle East and all of that, but felt very, very good and very safe about doing business there. It's one of the places, there's like list of places I'll take my wife back to, and Dubai would be one. Certainly South Africa would be one. Singapore would be one. Yeah, so it was great. Getting to do all that. But at the end of the day, it's still work.
Right, good point.
It's still work. And so that getting to go back to some of those, it will be fun over time. Yep.
And like you said, it all started in a little town called Warrensburg.
Absolutely. absolutely.
Excellent. Now so 2018 is when you retired from Hallmark.
That's right. Yep.
Congrats, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
How's it been?
It's been great. I mean, I almost have to pinch myself that I can get up in the morning and kind of do what I want to do,
Right.
And not that I didn't enjoy work and all that, but I read the paper, I take my time, I make my coffee, and that's just been outstanding. The flexibility, I've totally enjoyed it. My wife has not left me yet. Because
That's good too.
yeah, I was a little bit concerned about that. We've been married almost 40 years, but I was only home about 18 of that.
Right.
So we really haven't been married that long, and now we're having to live with one
There you
another.
go.
But
Still learning.
no. So it's been great. We have a couple of grandchildren. I'm able to spend time with them, and you get to kind of choose what you want to do, and that's been just great. Yeah.
And what are you choosing to do now?
Yeah,
What
what I told everybody that I was going to take a gap year, which the gap year's over now, and I was going to say no to a lot of things, and I did. So I've tried to, I really do. I have this sense of needing to give back, and not just financially or monetarily, but there's some of I mentioned, there's been a lot of Dr. McFarland's and Dr. Parmley's in my life that invested in me that didn't have to, and now it's my turn to give back and to invest. So I'm trying to do I want to do, because I had the international work, I want to do one thing globally, one thing kind of more regionally, if you will, and then some local things. And so I'm involved in a board that's actually located here in town. It's called Agora, and we do work with businesses in developing countries to help them get financing, to help them along the way that they don't get taken advantage of wrongly. And so our CEO is located here. I'm on the board, and I do some mentoring by phone mainly. I haven't actually made a field trip yet, but I've been involved in that now for a year. So that's my global thing I'm doing. University of Central Missouri, you mentioned that I'm on the foundation board there. I'm in my third year. So I took that on before I retired to just learn and understand, and I found that there's a lot of needs at our alma mater. So I'm very committed to that, and then I do some local board work and church work here in Kansas City. Yeah. And what I find is, kind of my biggest surprise is I don't have as much time as I thought I did.
Yep.
And I'm pretty busy, and I'm almost too busy, really.
Sure. It makes you wonder how I have time to work.
Yeah. I don't know how I did it.
Yep.
I think I've gotten I'm less productive than I used to be.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. And obviously, I look forward to working alongside you on the Alumni Foundation board and hearing more about the other organizations you've been involved in and the impact that you're able to have.
Yeah, and I'm still, I would just say I'm still kind of feeling it out and figuring it out. Because the one great thing I find is if you get into something and you say, okay, either I don't feel like I'm making an impact, or I'm not enjoying this. Find a way out, right? So where we've all been in our career, okay, I got to do that, or I got to do this. Okay, you had to do this, but now you can kind of choose what you want to do. But and so what I'm kind of searching for, and I don't think I've really hit it yet, as to just where can I make the most impact? Because whether you look locally in our community with children, whether you look more in our state or you look globally, there's just a lot of needs. And I think getting us to the point that everybody kind of, where's your passion? Where are you going to make the biggest difference? And I think you can make that big difference for a long, long time. And I don't think it matters whether it's at your local church or whether it's somebody rocking a baby at Children's Mercy Hospital. All of that's needed. Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis star, who had contacted AIDS through a blood transfusion. He could have been quite angry when he was passing away, and his final words were something, I won't get it exactly right, but start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And that's always stuck with me, that's kind of I got to do what I can, and I think we all do that. This world will be a better place. And so some of that goes back to Central Missouri, kind of instilled that in me. So anyways, I hope to do more. I don't think I'm hitting on all cylinders yet.
Well, you'll get there. It takes time, right?
Yeah.
You have a 38-year career and made a lot of changes throughout it. And hopefully, there's a very long retirement. And
That's
there's a lot
right.
of progression along the way there too.
Yeah, there's still, I think I've always looked at it as the next chapter is always the best chapter, really. I mean, there's no time like when you're newly married, like you, Corey,
Yes.
And you have kids, and there's no time like that. And then your kids grow up, and all of those things are, there's bumps along the way, but each chapter can be a better chapter, and that's kind of how I look at it now. And I even going back to events at UCM now, I think, gosh, I'm so much better than I used to be.
I know what you mean.
I don't think they'd ever let me in now. Back then they wouldn't have let me in. They wouldn't let me in today, I don't think.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, that's good. I think that's good wisdom to bestow upon anyone. Anyone who's listening or watching. So, okay, good. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Sure.
I want to kind of move us along here next.
Okay.
And what we're going to do next is what we have called, or what we've dubbed as the Mule Minute.
Okay.
So this is the lightning round here.
Okay.
That's sponsored by Falcon Wealth Advisors.
Right.
And what we do here is really just rattle through 9 or 10 questions.
Okay.
Short questions, just kind of looking for your immediate thought or your immediate answer.
Okay.
So no,
I'm old and I'm slow.
No, that's okay. We're not gonna. There's no stopwatch, so no pressure there. But I just kind of want to rattle through it and hear what you have to say. So we'll start it off easy. First, I'm gonna change this question. First, what's your favorite destination now that you're retired?
Keystone, Colorado. Love to ski.
What is your favorite way to relax?
With my grandkids.
How old are they, by the way?
3 and 6 and 2 on the way.
Wonderful. What's the best business decision that you ever made?
Go to Central Missouri.
What did you do on your first day of retirement?
I hiked in Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains.
What is one thing that you know now that you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Gosh, the importance of relationships.
Yes, that's that.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. If I handed you a microphone right now and said that you have to karaoke one song, what song would you sing?
Let It Be. I can't remember it. Whispers, words of wisdom. Let it be.
That's good. That's a great choice. Outside of what you did professionally, what is one profession or career that you would have liked to have tried, or if you could do something other than what you did, whatever it might be, what's one other profession you would have been interested in or you would have loved to try?
I did some work with UNICEF really through business, but in New York City, and the work they do around the world, and that's what I would have done. I would have worked with an international aid agency, I think.
Yeah, that's great.
Would have liked to have tried that.
My last question is, there's been many pearls of wisdom that you shared with us today, and there's been a lot of things we talked to, but if somebody came up to you and said, Homer, give me one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Well, I would just say stick with your dreams, be tenacious, and you'll get there. It might not all come at once, but if you stick with it and work hard, you can achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in life.
And I think sometimes more than people even realize that they're capable of.
Absolutely. I always said that management's responsibility was really to help people do things they never thought possible. And I had a lot of people along the way that helped me in that regard. And because if you would have had me write down some of the things that I was allowed to do in my career, I would have never written them down. Mm-hmm. Things that, and so just have those dreams and stick with them, be tenacious, and you'd be amazed at what you can achieve. And I think that's something that, high school students. I was a first generation college student in my family. I think that's what people need to hear, because you can, if you can dream it, you can do it, as Walt Disney said, right?
Yep.
Yep.
That is great. Well, thank you. You did a great job.
Well, thank you.
That wasn't so bad, right?
Oh, no.
Thank you
out
for,
of practice. Okay.
Thanks for participating. So I have just one more question for you, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here. This is something that, so here my team, Falcon Wealth Advisors, we've talked about this, and we ask guests when they come on the show, just by the nature of what it is that we do, you being an accounting and finance person yourself, what is the first lesson that you can remember learning about money or finance? What is something that you've learned that you can remember early on that's just really stuck with you?
If it's okay, I'm going to tell you two things, because one was in my family, I was taught to give back, to give to the church, to give to United Way. That was something that from an early age that I was taught was to, but I was also taught then to keep some for yourself. My dad used to say, keep some for JoJo, and so I learned to save that way. But there was, what really comes to mind is there was a man named Weldon Brady who was a trustee up until recently at Central Missouri, and Weldon was a banker in Knob Noster, so I can't remember how old I was, but I wanted to trade in my old car and get a new car. So my dad said, we're going to go borrow some money, go see the banker. And I went to see Weldon, and he was going to, I can't remember, I think I was going to borrow $2,000 or something. I'm sure my dad was going to sign for it. But, he convinced me that I didn't really need that car.
Really?
And that it was
the lender.
Yeah. Because he kind of gave me this thing. Do you really think you need a car? What, your old car's fine, And so, not that I drive old cars all the time now, but I keep cars for a long time, and I've never forgotten that from him.
That's good. I like that.
And my dad could have just. I can't remember why, but for some reason, Dad, and I'm sure it was a setup deal, because my dad knew Weldon.
Sure.
But I happened to get to spend some time right after Weldon was on our foundation board at one time, and so when I started on the foundation, I actually got to spend some time with Weldon before he passed away, and I've never forgotten that lesson, and it still serves me well today.
That's good. Well, thanks for sharing both of those
absolutely.
things. I appreciate that, and that's it's interesting to hear, and I'm glad it stuck with you because people learn, right? So,
absolutely,
and certain things stick with people.
For sure.
That's why I think the value of the words that we have that we share with people, whatever it might be, the pearls of wisdom, advice that we give people. You never know what's going to be valuable to someone for the rest of their lives.
That's right. That's right.
Well, good. Well, thanks again for taking the time to come on today. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you very much.
I hope that our listeners and our viewers enjoy the show and enjoy the conversation. As always, as a reminder, you can search for Central Missouri Alumni Stories either on YouTube if you want to watch the video. You can certainly subscribe there. Additionally, you can find the podcast or the audio wherever it is that you find your podcast, whether that's Spotify or iTunes or wherever else it might be. So make sure that you subscribe to the show so you don't miss any new episodes, and certainly make sure that you give it a 5-star review, assuming that you believe it warrants one. So lastly, I will just leave you all, if you are interested in coming on the show yourself, if you have a suggested guest, any advice or feedback, criticism, whatever it might be, I'm all ears, and I won't take offense to any of that. So please feel free and reach out to me. You can either email me. My email address is Corey@Falcon Wealth Advisors, or you can find me on Twitter is the method of communication, probably the social media that I use most frequently, and my Twitter handle is @CoreyBittnerKC.
Terrific.
Homer, thanks again.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Corey.
I appreciate all of you, and hope that you have a great day.
Terrific. All right.
Thank you.